So the title of my talk today is Starting the Year with God. It's a good place to start, isn't it? Starting the year with God. So are you all ready to start the year with God?
Yay!
Yes.
Never leave home without God.
Never leave home without God. I love it. I love it. All right. Excellent. Good. Good. Okay. So as you know, or may not know, in religious science, it's tradition in January to get back to the basics. That's why I had Suzanne read from the first chapter. And we always go back to those fundamental science of mind tenets. And that's exactly what we're doing this month in January. But we're going to do it in our own unique way. Because each week we will bring fresh eyes and a new perspective to our life-altering teachings. And while we will be looking at things with fresh eyes and from a new perspective this month, there are some things that are so basic, so fundamental, that there might not be a new perspective on them, but there's always a way to go a little deeper, to really embody it and to take it to a different level. So that's what we're going to do today. So my invitation to you is to put fresh eyes on some things you might have heard before. So there is one principle and presence in the universe, one cosmic reality, God, or whatever you want to call it. In New Thought, we really don't get hung up on labels. We realize that some people have negative feelings about the word God. I don't think anybody here really does, but I've heard stories that religion or religious experiences for some people in their childhood were so painful that they didn't even want to hear the word God. It just brought back so many negative feelings for them. And yes, Patricia.
Well, not the negative part, but I see it from my long-term experience was it's limiting because you take a word like cat, person,
Yes, yeah.
even name somebody.
Yeah, and
It's
even
limiting.
when
And
you
I
try
don't
to
want
list
that
the
limit.
qualities of God, love, peace,
Yeah,
joy.
It's external.
It's-
also.
Well, universal spirit is...
Right. We limit with language. We just do because it's the only way, and that's where we embrace other methods of meditation where you get the feeling, and there's just many ways to experience spirit, and language is just one way that we work at communicating
God is
that.
a universal spirit, so...
Exactly. So there is one principle and presence in the universe, one cosmic reality, God. All creation originates in this one source. God is. God is all there is. And from this one infinite source flows the spiritual, mental, and physical universe. All life, all love, all law, all energy, all harmony, all being, all physical form or effect are all contained in the one. And this is from our foundations course. This is what we teach in our very beginning courses when we have our classes. It's said that we are a teaching institution that just happens to have Sunday celebrations. So we're bringing that all together here. So this is really a simple yet deeply profound concept, one that we can get and then forget. And then we get it again and we forget it again. And then we get it again and we forget it again because that's just human nature, isn't it? It's like, aha, I got it. And then we get back into the scheme of things and we forget. So today I want us to get it again. Everything is contained within the one. It is all God. There is one life. That life is God. And if you're new to this way of thinking, which I don't think any of us are really new to this way of thinking, or if you were in a moment of forgetting, this concept requires a shift in thinking. Because we may have slipped into duality thinking. What is duality thinking? God and. God and what? God and the devil. Good and evil. Two sides, all right? Heaven and hell. God and anything else. And we don't believe that, do we? We believe that it's all God. It's all God. So let's say that together. It's all God. So what does that say about us then? We are each a creation of God, made of the God substance, unique, individualized incarnations of spirit. This incarnated spirit is the essence of every human being. This essence is unique to each of us. It can never be lost, damaged, diminished, or destroyed throughout our eternal journey. Now and forever, each of us is an expression of God right where we are. Despite our feelings of separation, this oneness is irrevocable and eternal. It is who we are. So that's one of my favorite ideas. Despite our feelings of separation, this oneness is irrevocable and eternal. It is who we are. We have a phrase we often use here, which I also love, and very simply it is, God in me, as me, is me. God in me, as me, is me. Let's say that together. God in me, as me, is me. And because this is true, we matter. We're enough. There's that word, enough. Not because of anything we have ever done or will ever do. We didn't have an agenda that we have to complete to be enough. Just by us being here, we are enough. Because the source of our identity is God. Or as Ernest Holmes put it, the highest God and the innermost God is one God. It's all God, and I am one with that. So, let's take a look at in the beginning, right? In Genesis, they talked about original sin. So where do we stand with that? We do not believe in original sin. You're never going to hear me tell you that you are sinners, which perhaps you may have heard at some point in your life in the past. For example, there was a brand new minister in this church, and he preached his very first sermon. And after it was over, a church member and a guest were talking. "Why did you ask the other preacher to resign?" asked the visitor. "Oh," said the member, "he was always preaching that we were sinners, and if we didn't mend our ways, we'd all go straight to hell." Puzzled, the visitor said, "Well, that is just what the new preacher said today, isn't it?" "Yes, it was," said the member, "but the other preacher acted as if he were glad of it." Well, I'm glad that instead of believing in original sin, we believe in original perfection or original innocence, or my favorite, that each of us is an original blessing. We are each an original blessing because God is in me and as me and is me. Exactly. This is the nature of reality, and it's non-negotiable. It cannot be won or lost, bought or sold. Nor is it a gift that God bestows upon us or upon someone who has followed the doctrine of a particular religion and checked all the boxes, right? It simply is the way it is. Spirit put the stamp of individuality upon itself, and it called it you. While we do not have the power to change our actual identity, we can change how we think about ourselves. That's where the power comes in, right? One day we may think of ourselves as capable of dealing with life, and the next day incapable. But the truth is, regardless of appearances or how we feel, we are one with all of the power of the universe, and therefore always, always capable. These beautiful New Thought teachings, then, reveal the nature of reality and the part we play in it. They answer the age-old question, who am I? By telling us that we are conscious centers of divine intelligence. As such, we have the ability to use our conscious minds to create desired experiences. I love how Thomas Troward puts it. And he contributed a lot to Ernest Holmes and his writings. In fact, if you go back and read from Troward, you'll see similarities in how Holmes wrote. And he says, "But all the time there has been no change in the universal spirit. The only change has been in the mental attitude of the individual. He has come into a new thought, a clearer perception of God. He has faced the questions, what is God? Where is God? How does God work? And he has found the answer in the apostolic statement that God is over all, through all, and in all. And he realizes that God is the root of his, the individual's, own being, ever present in him, ever working through him, and universally present around him." Our starting point, then, is to recognize that everyone matters. Everyone matters. Whether they know it or accept it, everyone is enough, because each person exists as an individualization of the creative power of the universe that we call God. Everyone matters. a power that exists within the individual and yet transcends the individual. This great truth satisfies the soul because it takes us home to the very source of our being, which is God. In God, we are enough. During one Sunday lecture, Ernest Holmes said, "Many who have lost faith in God have, in this new manner of thinking, found what their souls had sought. The emphasis is insistently on God, ever present, ever available, and our ability to make ourselves receptive to the inflow of the divine spirit. In essence, this is the primal message of enlightened prophets of all ages, and this is the message of religious science," and I'll add New Thought as well. This is the message of New Thought. This idea is beautifully illustrated in one of my all-time favorite stories, written by Jack Canfield in the first volume of The Chicken Soup for the Soul. And it goes like this. In the late 1950s, a group of monks had in their monastery a giant clay Buddha. The clay Buddha was enormous, 10.5 feet tall, weighing over 2.5 tons. In 1957, are you familiar with this story? Mm-hmm. Yes. The monastery was being relocated, and so everything, including the giant Buddha, had to be moved. When the crane began to lift the giant statue, the weight of it was so tremendous that it began to crack. What's more, the rain began to fall. The head monk, who was concerned about the damage to the sacred Buddha, decided to lower the statue back to the ground and cover it up with a large canvas tarp to protect it from the rain and try again to move it again the next day. Later that evening, the head monk went out in the rain to check on the Buddha. He shined the flashlight under the tarp to see if it was staying dry. As the light reached the place where the Buddha had cracked, the monk noticed a little gleam shining back at him. He thought, how strange. As he took a closer look at this gleam of light, he wondered if there might be something underneath the clay. He ran inside, got a chisel and a hammer, and began to chip away at the clay. As he knocked off the shards of clay, the little gleam grew brighter and bigger. Many hours of labor went by before the monk stood face to face with an extraordinary, solid gold Buddha. Historians believe that several hundred years before the head monk's discovery, the Burmese army was about to invade Thailand. The monks in the land, at that time realizing that their country would soon be attacked, covered their precious Buddha with an outer covering of clay in order to keep their treasure from being looted by the Burmese. Unfortunately, it appears that the Burmese slaughtered the monks, and the true nature of the Buddha was buried with them until that day in 1957, when the Buddha was to be moved. Jack Canfield wrote, "Aren't we all like the clay Buddha, covered with a shell of hardness created out of our fear, and yet underneath each of us is a golden Buddha, a golden Christ, a golden essence, which is our real self. Somewhere along the way, we began to cover up our golden essence, our natural self. Much like the monk with the hammer and chisel, our task is to now discover our true essence once again." So that an amazing metaphor. Yes, each one of us. That's our task right now. So let me leave you with a passage from Ernest Holmes' book entitled The Art of Living, which was formerly called This Thing Called Life. And Ernest Holmes writes, "God is life, not some life, but all life. God is action, not some action, but all action. God is power, not some power, but all power. God is pure spirit, filling all space. This pure spirit animates our every act. There is a real you which lives in a real God, and the two are one. And the two are one." If we keep our minds stayed on these ideas, we will not only start the year with God, we will stay with God throughout all of 2016. And so it is.